So I want to call this Tampa Bay Estuary Program meeting to order. And the first thing we need to do is approve the main minutes. If I can have a motion. Oh, sorry. Roll call, sorry, I missed that. If we want to go around the,
That's what I was
we
gonna
start
suggest.
over there. We'll
I
just,
think everybody could just introduce themselves and which board you sit on and the entity that you represent. And I'll take roll here as we go along.
great. We'll start kind of going this way. It'd be great.
Perfect. I'm Maya Burke. I'm the Assistant Director of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
I'm Charlie, I'm Security Director of Natural Resources, Manatee County, here to help Alyssa Powers do a great job. Thank you.
Do we have any online?
I'm Katrina Mikhalska from Natural Resources, Manatee County. I'm Solana Todd. I'm the Principal Environmental Planner here at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. Stacy Day with Pinellas County Environmental Management, and I'm part of the Management Board.
Harley Jones, Science Communication Coordinator with TDEP.
Cornelia Pernell, Pasco County Public Works.
Marcus Williamson, for Water Policy.
Blake Simmons, Environmental Social Scientist, Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
Alex Awad, City of Tampa, Civil Engineering, Planning Section. I'm the alternate for Councilman.
Ben Alashewski, City of Tampa, Stormwater Engineering, Management Board.
Carrie Flaherty Walia, Restoration Ecologist, Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
Good morning, David Glicksberg with Hillsborough County Environmental Services Management Board and alternate for Commissioner Miller on the policy board.
Jill Kunich, Tampa Bay Estuary Program Accounting Specialist.
Chris Pratt, Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County, and I'm on the management board.
Brandon Miller, I'm with the Florida DEP Southwest District. I'm on the Management Board.
Kelly Boatwright, I'm the Director of the Southwest District on the Policy Board.
Kelly Hammer Levy with Dallas County Public Works. I'm the co-chair of the Technical Advisory Committee with the Estuary Program, and I'm the Management Board Chair.
And I'm Commissioner Kathleen Peters of Pinellas County.
Ed Short, I'm the Executive Director of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
No voice.
She's not contagious. She just has laryngitis.
Sheila Suaro, I'm the Community Program Scientist with Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
Amelia Brown with Tampa Bay Water Demand Management on the Management Board.
Santino Provenzano, Senior Director, Environmental Mosaic, co-chair for the Nitrogen Management Consortium, and I'm a member.
Mike Harding, I'm a council member for the city of St. Pete.
I'm Julie Vogel. I'm an alternate for Pajesh Freeman on the Management Board. City of St. Pete.
Melissa Powers, Manatee County Natural Resources. Megan Blanchard, co-chair of the Community Advisory Committee.
Greg Honorado, Fish and Wildlife, I'm an alternate for Dr. Leanne Llewellyn.
Randy Smith, I'm the Natural Systems and Restoration Bureau Chief for the Water Management District, alternate for Nancy Watkins, Governing Board Member on the Policy Board.
Yamavan Dixon, I'm the Manager of the Surface Water Improvement Management Program for the district, and I'm sit on the management.
Commander Johnny Purify, I'm EPA Region 4. I work in the Water Division, the grants, infrastructure, and new.
Mark Speck, Senior Scientist, TDEP.
Colleen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, Colleen Weaver. I'm a Legislative Assistant and an alternate for Commissioner Jack Mariano.
Okay, do we have anybody online?
We don't have anyone online and we have a quorum for both boards.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna ask if anyone has any changes to the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to the May minutes. We need a motion to approve the minutes.
So there's two parts to this agenda item. The first part is the Management Board minutes. And so if we could have the Management Board members. Consider the motion.
Approval from the management board members.
So moved.
In a second,
Second.
okay, so motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes, and then we have the policy board. We need a motion for the policy board.
So moved.
Second.
No questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes as well. So we'll go to the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Have we got anybody to speak in the public hearing?
staff presentation, and then if there's anyone from the public.
Okay, after that, okay, then we'll move on to the staff presentation.
Yeah, at your places is the notice of our budget hearing. This is something we're required to do as an independent special district of the state of Florida. Provide the public opportunity to comment on our initial program-wide budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which would start October 1, 2025. You go to page 13 of your packets, basically outlines both our expected revenues and expenditures for fiscal year 2026. I'll start at the expenditure side, the bottom table, just to kind of talk about where our program expectations are for the next fiscal year. In total, we're expecting about 1.35 million in overall operations or CCMP implementation of our program. That's basically encompassing our staff, salary and fringe, as well as our overhead for rent, insurance, and everything else. That is about a 4% increase over fiscal year 2025 levels, and I'll talk about that a little bit more during agenda item 5. And then the remainder of our bulk expenditures for fiscal year 2026 are related to contracted scientific restoration and outreach projects, usually through contractors or consultant services that we support through our normal work plan grants as well as additional grants. So this encompasses work from a new restore grant to identify stormwater controls, primarily in the Old Tampa Bay Basin. Also includes projects that were funded through the IIJA funding that we received as a national estuary program. Also includes any implementation of Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund, Bay Mini Grants, projects that are expected to be completed through the end of fiscal year 2026, as well as our core projects identified in the work plan that you guys just approved at the May board meeting. So in total, that's about 2.7 million in contracted expenses, which is about 30% more what we're expecting from this current fiscal year. And then to make up any shortfalls in appropriations, we usually have an in-kind project. And for fiscal year 2026, that in-kind project is Pinellas County Fort DeSoto Living Shoreline Project that helps us meet that 50-50 federal match. So in total, we're looking at about 4.23 million in terms of project expenditures. In total, that's about 15% from what was approved during mid-year for fiscal year 2025. And our revenues to cover those will primarily be from federal sources. Next year, there's about 34% increase, and that relates to both those projects funded through Restore IIJA funds in our normal work plan. And then we'll supplement that, as we usually do, with additional TBERC support, as well as our local contributions through our partners sitting around the table. We have collected revenues from the past for some of those TBERC projects, so any balance that you see, that agency balances revenues that we've collected in prior fiscal year. But again, bringing our total revenues expectation for fiscal year 2026 to be 4.23 million. So with that, that concludes my presentation of the fiscal year 2026 program-wide budget.
Do we have any questions? Seeing no questions, do we have any public comment? Seeing no public comments, we need an approval on your budget or just information only?
Just agenda item 5 will approve it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to public comments. Any other general public comments? Okay, none. So we're going to move on then to number 5, which is you've just been presented to adopt the fiscal year 2026 program-wide budget. So I'd be looking for a motion.
So approval.
In a second, we got a motion and a second over here.
And this would only be the policy board approving it at
The policy board. So for the policy board, any questions? None. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. And then we will move on to the quarterly financial report.
Yeah, on page 17 of your packet is our activity through the third quarter of fiscal year 2025. This just shows sort of our expectation of where we're at relative to the mid-year budget amendment that we just adopted in May. If you look at the last column on that page, usually kind of expect us to be about 75%, being 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. And for the most part, we're at or under a lot of those levels for both for revenues and expenditures. In total, we're about 67% of our expected revenues. And again, this is following the pace of completion of projects. And you'll notice on the expenditure sides, the Texcom's contracts and consultant services, we're only about 48%. Again, that is due to sort of the pace of implementation of projects. It isn't to say that those projects would go away at the end of the fiscal year. Those expected expenditures from fiscal year 2025 that aren't recognized in this current fiscal year be rolled into the next fiscal year. That's why you saw a little bit of an increase in our budget that we just adopted. So the only other thing I just wanted to mention that was earmarked there is our in-kind revenues. We didn't collect any in-kind revenues or expenditures through this third quarter report, but subsequent to it, we've actually worked with both the Manatee County as well as City of Tampa to collect all the required in-kind for this current fiscal year. So that'll be reflected in the final budget that we'll bring back to the board and the fourth quarter report in November of our financial activity. In total, pretty pretty normal financial report. If there's any questions on our activities through the course of this fiscal year, I'd be happy to take on that.
Any questions? You guys make this very easy. Okay, so for the quarterly report, we'll need a motion to accept that financial report
Policy board member.
from the policy board.
So moved.
Okay, we had a motion over here, a second over here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and that passes unanimous. So on the executive director annual performance review, there's some information in your packet and Chair Mariano was gonna have talking points for that. Did he send any of that?
I have the summaries available to review.
Okay,
And I typically leave the room, yes.
oh, okay.
So leave now.
So, I know the summaries, I did not see them. I was out of the country, so I kind of missed that. So, does anyone have any questions or comments? Are they interested in seeing or hearing about the summaries?
Usually I just provide a high level overview. And so this year we actually only received 3 responses
Okay.
to the performance appraisal. And I think that's understandable because there's so many new policy board members. Folks didn't feel like they maybe had enough experience working directly with Ed in order to effectively evaluate his performance. For those reviews that he did receive, he received an average overall score of 4.09. So out of 5. Generally, his highest scores were related to things like the staffing, support, his leadership, and his ethics. Also, folks were pleased with major accomplishments. The lowest score was in the area of influence. For the comments that we received, again, there was general expressions of support for the direction of the program and his performance, particularly within an unpredictable political and fiscal environment. And then there were some really lovely and helpful detailed comments provided by Councilmember Cotton about the priorities of the program and the goals that were expressed moving forward. He did express some caution in the area of communication and outreach. So I know Councilmember Cotton's not here to sort of elaborate on that, but generally I think the feedback that was received was positive. If you all have anything to add or ways that this process could be easier for you, particularly as new board members, you know, I can design an evaluation process that meets your needs as the reviewers as well.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else they want to share, add? Disagree with?
As a new board member, 6 months and 3 meetings into this, I am amazed and overwhelmed at what this group is able to do with really not a lot of money at all. I don't know enough to offer constructive, but overall, I'm just thoroughly impressed with what they're able to accomplish with really just not much money. So I appreciate the direction.
Yeah, they certainly have the expertise. We have great expertise around this table, so Any other comments? And I'm new as well, so, I echo your thoughts. So any other discussion?
I'll just share that Ed really does value your feedback. You don't have to provide it only during performance appraisal time. If you have any suggestions for him, he's very interested in hearing it. So anytime you'd like. And I think for those of you who had briefings, we also typically discuss things like merit increases for the executive director at this time. Ed's indicated that given the budget climate and the moment right now, he's not recommending any increase for his salary. And so he's hoping that you trust his judgment on that and let him allocate funding to staff accordingly.
Everybody okay with that? Very generous. Okay. Any other comments? So this isn't for him, but when you guys schedule these events, these calendar events, instead of just putting policy board meeting, could you put the TBEP? Because I get 2 meetings that do calendar invites that just say policy board meeting. When we see it on our calendar, like what policy board meeting? So when you schedule, could you at least put what it is to help us a little bit? Would be really great. That's my only feedback is, and I'll get the other board that does that same thing. It's, hey, look at my calendar, it's policy board meeting. What policy board meeting? So I'd appreciate it if that was clear on our calendar invites. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has that question. So, we can ask him to come back in the room. There's no vote required or,
Action item.
Yeah, it's just consensus.
It is an opportunity for everyone if there is an issue to discuss that you have.
yeah, so, great, thank you. Everybody thinks you're wonderful, you're doing a great job. We're all very pleased. So welcome back. And then we have information items.
Yep, under page 19, just a couple of items to discuss with the board. Just wanted to give you an update in terms of our federal funding outlook and update there. We are looking fairly well in terms of federal funding at least to course of next fiscal year, which would include our fiscal year 2027 budget and development of that in early February, then approval in May. There's both a House and Senate appropriations bill in committee right now that basically level funds the National LSA programs about 850,000 each, according to those appropriation bills. So that's great news for our program, which will hopefully level fund us through at least next fiscal year. Also want to mention that there's a reauthorization bill in play as well that has about 17 co-sponsors in Congress right now. What that means is any federal program where appropriations are developed through Congress, if there's authorization for those programs, that just gives a little bit more impetus for those appropriations to be approved and then signed into law by the president. So there is a reauthorization bill basically level funding us through 2031 in play, and we're hoping all those bills will be heard by the close of this calendar year under Congress. The other thing I want to mention, we've had a longstanding relationship with Restore America's Estuaries since about 2014 to co-manage the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund. Due to various reasons, namely some of their management and outlooks in terms of federal funding, they're actually going to step away from that co-management role with us, with the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund. It's not necessarily a bad thing for us because we have been engaging with partners who we utilize Restore America's Estuaries as a 501c3 to accept private donations for those entities that can only provide those funds to a 501c3 since we are regional government. Since finding out about this from Restore America's Estuaries, we actually had some conversations with some of the partners that have been contributing, namely Mosaic was a partner contributing to the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund. And we think that relationship's going to continue, even without Restore America's Estuaries, co-managing the fund. So this just means that we're going to absorb some of those projects that were previously co-managed by, Restore America's Estuaries, and moving forward, we're going to be, managing them entirely as staff. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. The two active projects are both Manatee County projects that are, currently co-managed by Restore America's Estuaries. They're going to be transferring that management to us, as well as the funds supporting those projects, hopefully over the next quarter. So I just wanted to, again, bring that to the board's attention as a change to the TBRF management protocols moving forward. And then just a couple other things that just briefly wanted to mention. Our Bay Mini Grant program is currently open. So if you know of any community groups, please share information with them, refer them to our website, which will give them a little bit more information on that community-based grant program that we administer on an annual basis. Applications are due by September 10th. We usually have about 100,000 in funding based on our sales of our tarp and tag license plate that comes back to the program to fund that each year. So we always looked at fund at least about 25 to 30 community-based projects to the Big Mini Grant program. And then last but not least, just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that National Estuaries Week is scheduled for September 20th and 27th September 20th through 27th. We have a couple of volunteer opportunities during that week, as well as some happy hours planned with other partners within the regions that you all are welcome to come out to and learn more about our staff, as well as what we do as the Estuary program. So looking forward to that. And that concludes our executive director and staff report. We do have a couple of committee reports.
Any questions about the staff reports? Okay, great. Well, we're going to move on to the Technical Advisory Committee report. Kelly?
So on page 20 of your packet starts the technical advisory committee reports. And I'm not going to go through all of the publications and open science projects and the presentations, et cetera, that have been done. But obviously, our estuary program team is always very busy, as you've heard from Councilman Hardy. They do a lot of amazing work in supporting the Bay, especially, you know, with regard to everything that's going on in Old Tampa Bay. So I encourage you to take a look at everything that they've produced on the agenda. There's links to everything. I also just want to thank them for, again, their ongoing continued support for the Roosevelt Channel 5 project, which is nearing the end of construction. And I know I'm so sorry it's taken so long, but I would encourage maybe a field trip later. This is a major effort to take an old 1970s a la, drain and ditch it channel and turn it into an oligohaline restoration project that we can really be proud of. And we also had support from the Water Management District on that project. So thank you for those design dollars and construction dollars through the TBEP program. So it's a long time coming, but it's also in the CCMP and it's a checkbox for completion this year. So I thank everybody for for their support of that. The other thing is just my ongoing continued request of all of us old folk to bring young folk to the TAC. We've got to grow the TAC, the future. The succession planning for the TAC has been a agenda, like an overarching agenda for me as I've watched, the Rob Browns and the Andy Squires and, all of the folks start to retire, what I call the parents of the TAC. I'm starting to feel like that's me now. And so I just want to encourage all of our jurisdictions, all of our partners to start bringing up the younger generation, the new scientists that are bringing all of this amazing work to your organizations. Please bring them to the TAC. And Marcus, what is the date for the next TAC meeting?
October 20th?
October 20th. So please put that on your calendars and read.
It's the 15th.
15th, October 15th. So again, please, I'm just going to say, everybody, like, your job for that meeting is to bring at least one person in. How's that?
We can talk more about that challenge in the strategic planning workshop.
Yes.
too.
So, thank you. And I don't think Ryan's here, so, okay.
So any questions for Kelly? No, seeing none. Okay, so Community Advisory Committee report, Megan?
Summer is a slower month for the Community Advisory Committee, but we still managed to contribute 23 volunteer hours. Pretty proud of. And the thing we're looking forward to most is convening a small group to review the Bay mini grants. So actually we got 14 participants in that review process, and I'm very dedicated to get the most influential and promising projects funded. And so we're gearing up to do that next after the closure of the call for projects on the 10th. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Megan, okay, thank you. So Maya, have you got any other, we want to talk about meeting dates and so forth?
Yeah, I mostly just wanted to call your attention to the proposed 2026 meeting dates that are in the packet. If you have any potential conflicts or known meetings that might create a challenge for your attendance, like the back or like Florida League of Cities, anything like that, if there's a conflict there, please let me know. I also just want to call your attention particularly to the May board meeting dates. May is an exceptionally challenging month for us to coordinate a meeting that does not conflict with our counterparts at the Coastal and Heartland Estuary Partnership and Sarasota Bay Estuary Program, as well as that May is also the time where the Regional Planning Council and the Resiliency Coalition host their Resiliency Summit. So we have a proposed Thursday Management Board and Friday Policy Board meeting. So that's something that's new. I have not reserved the room for any of these dates yet, so I can change them if need be. But otherwise, this is your notice that that's what we're thinking and the best that we could do for minimizing meeting conflicts between our partner programs.
Okay, so if anybody has a conflict with these, you have to look at your calendar. Please get back to Maya. So she can go ahead and move forward and reserve the room. Other than that, I think we're gonna make our time certain at 10:30.
Great.
Yes.
So if you want to go ahead and get started early and just go for it and start the workshop, that would be great. So we're going to work on our 2026 to 2030 strategic plan, funding strategy, and interlocal agreement update. And I'm going to let you take that.
Yeah, thank you again for getting us here at the 3 minutes ahead of the time certain. So we wanted to reserve this space to have this open dialogue with both the management and policy board members. Maya's going to start off, give a little bit of an update of our strategic plan and some of our progress in implementing the strategic plan over the past 5 years. Then we'll shift a little bit into talking about the interlocal agreement update and sort of timelines for that. I'll turn it over to Maya.
Well, first, let me say there's donuts in the back, so please help yourself. We're gonna do a few things a little bit differently to make sure that we have a really engaging conversation. So if you do want to take a minute to grab a snack, please help yourselves. Share the screen on Zoom. Okay, the first thing to know about our strategic plan today, I really want to just kind of highlight a lot of the great work that both we've done as a staff and you all have helped and participated in the accomplishments of implementing the vision that was laid out back in 2020 for that 5-year period. I want to talk about some of the internal review that we've done and kind of give you some ideas about where as a staff we think we might need to see some changes. But we also really want to hear from you all. Our value as an organization really does rely on you all, and we want to be service oriented to meet the needs of the Tampa Bay region as a whole. So if there's any sort of additional perspective or different direction that you would like to offer during this time, we welcome it. It will make this strategic plan a lot better. But we do want to sort of narrow this conversation down, not to all of the core strategies that are in the strategic plan. We really want to focus down on the partner support elements. And we want to do that because that's the one that's the most salient to you all as the representatives of our partnership. And so we're hoping that we can spend some time talking about those things. We have a few questions to walk through. But if those questions aren't the things that you want to talk about, you are not going to hurt my feelings. Just speak up and let us know what the issues that you think we might need to address in an updated strategic plan might look like. So there's a lot of new faces in the room, and we thought we would start off with an icebreaker. I know it's super painful, but hopefully this one isn't too terrible. So this is called ups and downs. And so the instructions are, I'm going to read a series of question prompts. And if your answer is yes to the question, I need you to stand up out of your seat. Okay?
Oh, that's so sad.
If your answer is no, you sit down. We're not going to do it for very long, just for a few minutes. It's going to be rapid fire. Is everybody ready? You should be standing up. All right. Are you a native Floridian? Were you born in a large city with a population of greater than 50,000? Have you ever lived in another NEP watershed?
I'm so sorry. May I repeat the question, please?
Have you ever lived in a watershed for another national estuary program?
No.
Have you lived in the Tampa Bay area for over 5 years? Have you lived in the Tampa Bay area for over 10 years? For over 20 years? Do you have flood insurance? Have you ever had gum stuck in your hair? Do you like to fish? Do you like to hunt?
You.
Can you swim? Have you ever driven a tractor?
I know.
Look at the tractor drivers. Have you read A Land Remembered?
Have you what?
Read the book A Land Remembered?
All of you should be standing with that one. Highly recommend.
Have you ever been featured in a movie or a film, not the home variety? Have you ever spoken to a group larger than 100 people? Have you ever served on a nonprofit board? Have you received a statewide award? Have you ever been in a tornado? Have you written a successful grant proposal? Have you visited all 50 states? Have you been to Europe? Have you been to Asia? Have you been to South America? Have you been to Africa? Have you been to Australia?
No.
Have you ever gone skydiving?
No. Sorry.
Have you ever been windsurfing? Have you been whitewater rafting? Do you have a tarpon tag? Have you ever owned some conversations to have? Have you ever owned a sports car? Do you have a pet dog? Do you have a pet cat? Have you ever grown your own vegetable garden? Do you use fertilizer? Have you ever lived in a house without air conditioning? Do you own a cowboy hat? Do you have a four-wheeler? You give me yours. Have you hiked more than 20 miles in one day? Some hikers in the room, all right. Have you eaten a raw scallop? I know at least two of you have. Have you eaten an oyster from Tampa Bay? Have you ridden a camel? Have you ridden a horse? Have you ridden a motorcycle? Have you visited a wild and scenic river? Do you like to play video games? Do you own a skateboard? Have you driven over the old Sunshine Skyway Bridge? Have you made a cake from scratch? Can you change a diaper? Can you change a flat tire? Do you know all the words of the first verse to America the Beautiful? Would you like me to quit? All right, we're trying to bring up the energy level, but I think it's like a nice way to real quick get to know a little bit about a lot of different people in the room who you probably don't know much about, and find out you have some weird stuff in common with them, random if nothing. And we didn't put you on the spot as individuals, so hopefully that worked for everybody. All right, so really quick, I just want to give you a high-level overview. This is not all-encompassing of everything that the estuary program has accomplished over the past 5-year period. This is really honed in on the strategic plan and the things that we've accomplished with respect to the strategic plan that went into effect in 2021. And really, for those of you who haven't been with us for that long, we view our strategic plan as the how we do things. The CCMP, the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, is what we work on. The strategic plan is how we work on those things. So our first cornerstone strategy is open science. We want to be the primary source of trusted, unbiased, and actionable science for the Tampa Bay estuary, and recognize that open science principles serve those core values. So with respect to open science, this team, I'm so proud of us. We've been prolific. We've published 93 TBEP technical publications over this 5-year period. That includes things that are published on our website for our own library, as well as papers that are published in the peer-reviewed literature. And for those of you who haven't worked with other estuary programs, I would argue that this level of accomplishment is unmatched. This is something that sets us apart as an estuary program throughout the entire country. During this reporting period, we also moved from a paper-only version of the State of the Bay report to also incorporating a web-based State of the Bay report, which is fed all of the data and information that you give us. We have open workflows that feed that information into our website. So we're providing that information in a distilled and simple way using open workflows. We have more than 124 public repositories on GitHub. So that's data that we are making public and serving up to the community, to other researchers, to you all as our partners. We completed an update to the economic valuation, and we took that information that the Regional Planning Council helped to develop in a printed report and developed an open science dashboard so that you can dive deeper into those individual components. During the last strategic planning workshop, we heard from primarily our policy board members that being able to tell the story of the economic value that the Tampa Bay delivers to the region is important. So we acted on that information and then tried to make it accessible as many ways as we could as possible. I also want to highlight the Pinellas County Water Quality Dashboard. This is not an accomplishment that is ours, but it's an example of some partner taking the open science ethos that we've been working to build with the Open Science Subcommittee and our many training events. And now Pinellas County, which Kelly, I don't know if you remember when we first started talking about open science, you were a little bit of a skeptic. And so I think like what you all have done is a testament, and the products that you have built are so useful, and hopefully they are delivering value to the community and they're doing it for less resources. And so it produces a savings as well. And then we've also done some novel things like hosted a hackathon and several different training events so that our partners both throughout the watershed as well as throughout the nation are trained in the best available techniques in open science. So a whole lot was accomplished with respect to our open science cornerstone strategy. When we looked at this internally, our perspective is that this strategy really is still relevant. We don't think that major revisions are needed, maybe some minor things that just reflect that we're no longer launching this initiative. We're sort of maintaining it and operationalizing it. And we think that there might be some opportunities to streamline and simplify this so that it's not quite as detailed and narrow in some of its focus. For our next cornerstone strategy is story building. This is where we're striving to be a reliable and compelling voice for science and stewardship, recognizing that storytelling is a powerful and evidence-based technique to inspire behavior change and lasting awareness of the Tampa Bay estuary. So this is where a lot of our communication and outreach initiatives fall. During this time period, like I mentioned, we completed the economic valuation study for Tampa Bay. We developed more than 10 key message memos with respect to a variety of different scientific issues, like the Piney Point discharge event and the subsequent ecosystem and monitoring response, the different seagrass mapping assessments and how translating that to the media and you all as a region so we can speak from one voice to interpret those information and share that information with the public. We participated in the development of 3 short films, things like Dear Tampa Bay with the National Wildlife Federation, as well as some work funded through the National Science Foundation and the Blue Gap Project. We participated in 3 different podcast interviews. These sort of novel storytelling techniques like podcasts and videos were a priority for your predecessor board. And so we were able to do some of that work and get our information in front of people in novel ways. We added an environmental social scientist so that we can make sure that when we are investing in behavior change campaigns, those campaigns are informed by evidence, they're science-based, and we can track the effectiveness of those campaigns to ensure that they're delivering value to you all as partners and to the region as a whole. We completed a master content marketing plan, and we've increased our collaborations with private sector partners like Toadfish, which made like koozies for your boat. They had one that was supporting us and seagrass efforts. And then with things like the Tampa Bay Debris Derby, where we've got a variety of folks in the marine industries sector, power pole, boat, a variety of different folks are really like partnering to make that Debris Derby a big event. So we're working and engaging beyond just the public sector partners that you see primarily in the room today. Again, I think the team was generally happy, thinking that this strategy is working for us. There's some minor revisions and some streamlining that need to occur, but we're not envisioning a major overhaul here unless you all tell us differently. Our next cornerstone strategy is being a funding catalyst. We want to be a catalyst for scientific inquiry and collective action, recognizing that grant making is an effective way to amplify the social and environmental benefits of the Tampa Bay estuary. You all see we're a staff of 9. We can't do this by ourselves, but by making grants, we can help you accomplish those things that are shared goals and shared values for us, and we can bring others into the fold and help them accomplish projects that help implement the CCMP as well. So over this time period, we've seen a 23% increase in donations. That's due largely to our staff making those connections, creating those opportunities for folks to donate to the grant programs. We've awarded 7 TBERF grants that are addressing emerging issues. So we know that sometimes science investment is a risk. And when you have a limited budget like we do and you're a public sector entity, oftentimes we are risk averse. But we can use these grant programs to sort of take those risks and really see what we can learn about emerging issues and ways that we can then fold them into our ongoing operations. So over this time period, we funded things like understanding how micronutrients like B12 might be influencing pyridinium blooms, how we can work to make our seawalls more resilient by using 3D printed technology. We can look at doing living shorelines in a novel way at the neighborhood scale rather than as one private property owner at a time. We've invested in things like social media dashboards, analyzing the sentiment of information that's posted on different social media platforms and how it relates to different environmental challenges that we're facing here in the region. We're investing in green infrastructure and tools that can help partners like Hillsborough County adopt green infrastructure BMPs in their watershed. We're looking at some of these challenges that have popped up, like Caulerpa blooms, replacing seagrass meadows in Old Tampa Bay, and ways that we can control things like pyridinium, recurring algae blooms with techniques like using biochar. We've also taken some of the brochures and products that we've developed for you all to try and succinctly describe the return on investment. We also now do that for private sector partners who are donating to our grant programs, so that they're able to easily, tell the story and help be ambassadors about the work that's going on that's funded through these grant programs. We've worked really hard to update the applications to our grant programs and the quarterly reporting so that they are streamlined, simple, and require less effort from our perspective as a staff in terms of turning these from a grant proposal into contract language moving forward. And we've been able to use the contracts for grants to further support things like the open science initiatives that we're hoping to grow within the region by incorporating it into the contracts for these voluntary grants that we receive. So again, we don't see major changes here. This is just some opportunities to streamline. The internal operations cornerstone strategy, this is where we want to prioritize the development of our internal systems and processes to make sure that we're efficient and effective as a staff, so that our program management and recognizing that the controls, these are the things that are necessary for us to be able to stay on top as a program, that we have to be efficient, we have to be lean, because we have so much work, so few people in order to do that. This is a cornerstone strategy where we are recommending some changes this time. So over the past 5 years, we have a 6% increase in professional development spending. This was something that prior boards had encouraged us to do to make sure that we're investing in our staff so that they are growing in their career trajectories. We've actually increased staff from a staff of 6 at the time of developing the plan to a staff of 9, and we think that that is fully staffed. We've hosted 7 interns over that time period. We've created efficiencies and connections within our project management software, Smartsheet, with our budgeting and finance software, Xero. We've updated our operating procedures, updated how we do performance appraisals for both staff and the executive director, and we've revised our position descriptions for greater clarity and distinguishing tasks between the different positions that are there. So we think that this one is a strategy that does need some revision because we're in a different place today than we were in 2020. We are not sort of staring down the barrel of a series of retirements and planned attrition. We hope that we have a team for the long haul. So we think that this one needs to be revised so that there's less emphasis on growth of our staff, like actual numbers, and more on how do we make and build cohesion with the team that we do have. And so those are some of the changes that we will be proposing and bringing back to you in November. And then the partner support cornerstone strategy. We recognize that you all as our partners are the key to the long-term sustainability of the program and are vital to promoting the health and well-being of the Tampa Bay estuary. So in order to support you all, there's a few things we did. We started producing these key action memos after board meetings so that we turn them around within 2 business days so that you can share what happened at these board meetings with your colleagues. You all sit on other boards or have staff that works for you. This is hopefully a 1-page summary that's able to share and keep and amplify and use your network to let folks know what's going on at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. We've participated in every ANET messaging campaign that has happened, whether that's for generating support from elected officials or trying to engage the community and understanding about the values that estuaries bring to their day-to-day lives. Ed or I have presented at least 10 of your board meetings. So remember that we're always available to go and present on the state of the Bay, the nature of the program, whenever you have an issue or whenever we could support, but we have done at least 10 of these for all of the partners over this time period. We've also briefed more than 24 state and elected and federal elected officials over that time, talking about things like the value of the National Estuary Program, funding levels, and some of the core challenges that we're facing here in the Tampa Bay region, particularly with respect to Old Tampa Bay. And then we have worked because we recognize that having so many new board members, both on our management board and our policy board, as well as on our many committees, that there was a need to sort of create greater clarity in terms of the roles and responsibilities for each board. So we actually developed those guidance documents for all of our committees and our boards back in 2022. And we've been working really hard to experiment with different formats to have more engagement from the community so that they're actively helping to build with us a science and management program that serves the region. We don't want to do it for everyone. We want to build it together. And so we've been playing with some formats to elicit greater engagement in those kind of meetings. So this is the area that we really kind of want to focus our discussion with you all. We want to know, are these new products that we developed over this 5-year period, things like the key action memos, some of the summaries that are out there, are those things that are useful? How would you like us to engage with you all as board members and with your colleagues on greater boards? And how can we continue to, like Kelly was mentioning, make sure that the region is building a bench and participating actively in all of the work that we do here at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program? So that is my mile a minute, Gilmore Girl speed, what we accomplished over this 5-year period with respect to the strategic plan. And now I just really want to turn it over and open it up to you all. We're especially interested in kind of understanding your thoughts on this issue of making sure that our boards and committees are stable and effective. If there's barriers that we can work to eliminate or address, if there's incentives that we ought to be offering, or other sort of thoughts that you all have about engaging folks in our broader work. And there's donuts in the back if you need a jolt of sugar.
Have to do another ice break.
Oh, I went through all my questions.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, Marcus.
So I just, we've been starting to look at new technologies and doing a lot more lunch and learns. I don't know if that's an opportunity. We see some of the younger folks get really excited about some of that. So that could be a mechanism, maybe if there was like quarterly lunch and learns on science, a science topic or new technology. It just might be a way to.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Or if this question isn't what you want to talk about, you let me know.
Do you ever think of moving your meetings to the different counties?
Thank you for that suggestion. I have thought of that, and I wonder if that would meet the needs of the region, if there's support for that sort of thing. We have talked a lot about particularly for like the Community Advisory Committee, but I've more and more been thinking about it for the Management and Policy Board, especially the Policy Board, rotating the occasions. Is that something that would be helpful? Would that meet a need?
The Central Florida Regional Planning Council does that, and it gives the county that's hosting an opportunity to highlight, some of the successes that they've had, and people get to hear about that particular county. So it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree that it probably would be helpful for members, especially our policy board member, to get to meetings if it kind of rotated around.
Yeah. What do you think, Randy?
Sounds good.
Do you think, does the estuary program, do you think that there are barriers? Or have you, in the experience over the last 5 years, kind of working with the two boards, what do you think we can offer as help or incentives
I think one of the things that I didn't really highlight in my running through everything super fast, trying to get to a very long talk, is that we've had quite a bit of board turnover during this 5-year period. I think we've briefed and onboarded 17 new policy board members over the 5-year period. So for all of you, that makes the average number of policy board members that have represented your entity, I think it's almost 3 over a 5-year time period. So you tell me, we've got 4 meetings a year. If you had 3 board members representing you over that time period, some as many as 5. The only one that has had the same representative the whole time was EPA. And obviously Tom McGill is now retired. And so we have Commander Johnny Purify here with us now. But I think like that stability in and of itself is a challenge. And I know that my question is sort of, is it something that we can control? This is something that the prior boards have always identified as an issue. I know every board or body handles appointments differently, right? Sometimes it is like a chief of staff or a strong mayor. Sometimes it is an elected official or the chair, and the chair's rotating around. And so you kind of want to respect the autonomy of the individual boards and how they select those folks. I know we've had board members in the past who, like, this has been really meaningful work to them, and so they have requested to stay on the policy board for a long duration. But certainly I think that that element of turnover, that's a high level of turnover from my perspective. And I don't envy you all and the work that you have to do to try to get up to speed, because like the science stuff can be complicated and hard. And then you're also like, dealing with all the other complexities of regional cooperation. But yeah, I view that as a challenge. And I do think, we've heard from some of our new board members who are in some of, particularly Manatee and Hillsborough County, that the drive is a barrier for them to come over here.
I think the only thing to add to what Maya was saying is, in the strategic plan itself, our goal is to have participation for at least 2 years. As I brief new members, I always tell them it takes you at least a year to figure out sort of the natural rhythms of the organization and what we need to approve on an annual basis and provide the EPA to maintain our national estuary program status. So if you're only serving a year, that I think that does the entity a disservice. So if there's ways to promote at least 2 years of service from your entity on our boards, that would be great from our standpoint.
And if you have tips on how that process works, for your organization, and if there's, folks that we need to reach out to that's not you all, let us know, because your organizations, better than we do. So if there's ways we can help with that, we're happy to.
Well, I mean, a lot of the policy board members are elected officials, right? So even if they commit to 2 years, if they get unelected during that process, they can't commit to something where they're physically not in that position.
Totally.
So same thing with the water management district or governing board members. Policy board and serves at the pleasure of the governor. Well, that person can change out, regardless. So really, I think, and you only have 4 meetings a year. Right, so you mentioned that as well. So it's really, I think, key that you have strong alternates for those positions, and a lot falls on the alternates to, educate the turnover on the policy board primary member, right? So that's kind of the setup we have at the district. You mentioned, we've had some turnover on policy board on the side. The alternate situation has been stable for a long time, management board members have stayed. So we take, rather than put it on the T-bet of keeping the turnover of policy board members educated, a lot of that is following on, Viviana and I, with the stability. We try to ensure that our policy board member, outside of just those board meetings, is really kept to what's going on. So you sort of mitigate that, the part you don't have any control over, which is, them becoming not elected anymore, whatever. So, I think a strong alternate and a stable alternate is a big part of some stability even though maybe the main person may be turning over. But the 4 meetings is a challenge. I mean, CHNEP only has 3 meetings a year, so even more of a challenge to keep that engagement. Like you said, it's a full year plus before a member really gets into the feel of what's going on, and starts contributing. So yeah, I think those are challenges. I think that TMEP can only do so much. I think the entities themselves need to also, make sure that they've got a good, stable alternate situation to kind of supplement that potential turnover and keep those board members engaged so they can contribute with more quick lessons.
Have the other estuary programs seen similar issues over the last 5 years? Yes.
I think I'd be talking out of turn, I haven't like looked in detail, but in general, committee engagement is an ongoing challenge, I think, for estuary programs throughout the country. And different estuary programs succeed at it at different times, I think, and like things go through it. And well, Communicator, I don't know if you have any insight to share on that.
I've only served on one other team as APNEPS, and they were pretty steady.
Yeah.
It just depends. Each board has a different pulse, different run, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I think we knew we were kind of looking at a period of transition. We knew we had a lot of retirements in the management conference overall, which is why part of the last strategic plan really focused on like trying to set expectations and norms. Like, this is what the technical advisory committee does, and this is how you contribute, and this is, what effective participation looks like. And this is what we will provide to you all to support that kind of engagement. How much people really read those kinds of documents? Like, I'm not delusional. Like, I understand. Like, if there's a better way to convey that information, if you all have thoughts on it. I think we're probably going to continue to see churn. I think that's the way of careers now, both in the public sector and the private sector. You have more people that just sort of move on to a new role, to a new challenge, to a new place. So I do think like being better set up to sort of handle that kind of dynamic group is important. But I will say, like, when people throughout the country ask me about like what's been like the key to the Tampa Bay success story, the magic has been in the trust and relationships, I think, between the management and policy community. And it's hard to build that if you're not like intentionally, doing it.
Jen also brought up a good point in terms of engagement. Our primary goals have always been centered on sort of seagrass recovery in Tampa Bay. That's been sort of the shining star that has kept everyone involved. And she asked the question of engaging with more of the management policy board. Are there particular issues that we could better address over the next 5 years that are important to new board members that we're not addressing with that sort of focus on nutrients and seagrass? If there's things like that we could fill a gap or role within the region and sort of move the needle on environmental recovery, we'd be happy to do so. If it's, some other priority that we're not investigating now through the CCMP implementation.
Some for elected officials to identify with. This is what we need to solve. You guys have accomplished so much over the years. It's almost like it's rock and roll.
Yeah.
We need a hair on fire issue, something to engage us, something to engage them. We know what we're doing. That's what brings people in. Let's solve that problem. So y'all do great. I don't want to say we're doing it perfectly, but I've been working in support of this group in different roles for over 20 years. Some of us are the grandparents. And you can see that energy. You can see the elected officials go. I want to be on that board. They're working. Look what they're doing.
What's happening.
Yeah. I want to be there. So I'm just, the energy is kind of, it's cool for a Zen thing, but we need to bring that flow back up.
My hope,
how well is, and I don't mean to make it bigger, but I see the challenges in trying to staff a board and achieve tenure. Are all of the elected bodies, municipalities and counties represented in the geography of what is?
Not all, but those that are party to the interlocal agreement.
Okay. And is that something that has ever been looked at, extending that to?
So that, I think that's a question that this board has raised in the past. You know, I think there's been specific interest from representatives in Clearwater and Pinellas County and Pasco County to change the boundary so that it encompasses the western side of Pinellas County and the western side of Pasco County. So including Clearwater Harbor, St. Joseph Sound, and parts of the Anclote River Basin at minimum into the Gulf. So we've had numerous conversations around that. And it's sort of been something that has died on the vine for lack of unanimity. So we're a consensus-based board. When we adopt a new interlocal agreement, the interlocal agreement needs to be unanimous. And so while I know there's some interest for expanding the boundaries into those places and growing some of the other municipalities that fall within those regions, it hasn't been unanimous support, so we haven't been able to act on it. And these conversations have happened for decades before I was with the program itself. But between the last time we had that conversation, when we were doing an interim update of the CCMP, and now when we are really sort of primed to address that by adopting a new interlocal agreement, if that's the direction that you all choose to go, and then doing a big major overhaul to the CCMP. The legislature changed the law in 2024 that really put some restrictions on independent special districts like ours, and how and what we can do to change boundaries. And so if that's something that we think there is unanimity, if there is unanimous support for expanding the boundary of the program and those members who are at the table, that's a question that we would need to sort of, it's useful to know if we think we're in that place, if we're in a moment where we're ready to grow, so we know what legal hurdles we're gonna need to overcome, or if it's possible, given these new restrictions. But we have also grown the program in the past through joinder agreements to the interlocal. And so we've done things like added the port entities, for example, so that they are members of the board. But there's like a couple of techniques that we could do to grow the number of representatives at the table. But that consensus piece is really important. So if you all want to grow, that's something you need to tell each other and let us know as staff, because that's critical. Yeah, Alex.
Was there I know the reason I'm here because I've been doing this for 20-some years, so, and I've been alternate for Dingfelder to Hertog to now. So, but how do they know that they're supposed to commit? Is there a document that says that a council member or county committee, if you're on this board, you're committed the X amount of time? Is there some form that they?
Yeah, usually when we're on board and new members, we reference the strategic plan, which highlights, that 2 years of service that we hope to achieve by each of the new board members. That's usually how that.
Is there like a document that explains to them that I don't know, transition with the city that went from Dingfelder to Hertog? I don't know what the difference. How do they know that it's interesting board to them, not some other council member, So there's gotta be some document that this organization has that yes, this is something I'd like to serve.
Yeah, and the core governance document is the interlocal agreement, but then the products that we developed, hopefully that is the sort of hook to want them to participate and sort of highlighting the progress that we're able to achieve through this collaborative process in partnership through the program. And if our messaging needs to change a little bit over the next 5 years to really capture and engage those new policy members, that's something, that we'll entertain.
I know Tino's made that suggestion repeatedly for, a group that he's the co-chair of, which is the Nitrogen Management Consortium. Same challenges in terms of people retiring, moving on to different positions and so on and so forth. Letting people know sort of what the rules of engagement are in a real snappy, accessible way, I think is something that we're hearing.
The interlocal provides flexibility for the members. It says that they appoint them. It doesn't say for elective time. You can change them as needed, but as the onboarding is done, there's the encouragement to have the consistency. I know you and I have worked for the city, and those representatives have gone for years in the past. But the interlocal is where you would actually need to have some change there for specific lengths of time.
Yeah, and that's an option we could bring back to the November meeting, specific language to include that in our, that's of interest to this group.
What about just like a non-binding, pledge of service to a group or something like that, something that our elected officials would continue on with? I know, for St. Pete, Councilmember Floyd was our rep, before, and I think he appreciated the board, and hopefully Councilmember Harding is here for in it for, 2-year haul or more, and maybe just having that signature of, yes, I commit to this.
Yeah,
would help.
as Jan mentioned, most of the interlocal is non-binding. It's
not
the
a-
decision
not
of the board,
binding. It
so.
would be a-
But statements to the effect
Stars.
that Alex was mentioning, preferential to have at least 2 years of service by a management and policy board member, something along those lines, inserted actually into interlocal that could give it greater weight as each year organization sort of consider representation on our board at least.
And I appreciate your sort of candid feedback on, I agree that we should have the interlocal sort of dot and cross. But is that really like the thing that you need to hear in order to sort of understand the commitment that we're looking for and like the value that we're expressing as an organization? Or is it something more like what I've heard Tino express in the past, which is like a snappy pitch deck that really summarizes all these things or something? Like, I don't know, like you tell us like what is palatable and useful to you all? Is the interlocal it?
So at least in Pinellas County, we get a new chairman every year. And that chairman determines what committees each commissioner is on. So I could commit to 2 years, but that doesn't mean that the next chairman is gonna, so even if I committed, if the next chairman says, no, you're not gonna be on, then, we just don't have that ability to make that commitment. We can do a better job of informing the incoming chairman that this is on PSTA, we got so many 3-year terms or something, 3 terms, and each term is 3 years. And again, the chairmans don't even consider that, really. Unless I request it, which I will, I'll request it. They usually honor our request, but if 3 people request it, then only one's gonna get it. And so, but we can provide information to the chairman that we look for a 2-year commitment. And so at least if it was somebody who's only been there a year, they would consider a second year. Or it's put on me or any member to go to the next chairman and say, they really are looking for a 2-year commitment. I enjoy serving on this. I would like to continue. Then, then it's on us. And that's really probably the best way to go, is it being on us. To go to that next person that's going to do the appointment to say they want a minimum of 2 years. I enjoy serving on this. I would like to stay. But it's just not something we can mandate.
In the control, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. It's my opinion on it too.
And I think Charlie was on for a really long
He
time.
was. There are other things you guys want to talk about committees and boards? Alana?
That's an expansion question. I haven't been a part of those discussions with this group yet, but is there a way we could do like a temperature check of the room, since there are a lot of people here? Have you brought that up recently? Or people have told you like where they are in terms of, yes, we'd like an expansion, or no, we don't? Is there a way to do a temperature check now of that?
I kick that question to the room. Would you all be comfortable giving like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs there if you're neutral or unsure about a boundary expansion? Or do you not feel prepared to kind of?
I'm gonna do a little, I don't know that everybody in the room has the background on, you know, why the question came up. Like, the reason why, you know, we had talked about the western side of Pinellas County is literally the estuary program boundaries stop at the Narrows. And we partnered with EPA and the Southwest Florida Water Management District and some of the cities that are currently not in the estuary program to develop a CCMP for that area that mirrors, has all the same requirements. The EPA project manager worked with the estuary program, so she kept us on track and make sure that we stayed consistent and true to the National Estuary Program requirements. We're now updating that with some additional data, additional process, because we're starting to see water quality changes and we're trying to understand that. We have a interlocal agreement with all of the cities, and in that area, Pinellas County does all the water quality monitoring and seagrass monitoring and benthic monitoring. And again, we have mirrored those processes to align with how the estuary program does work. And again, we report that out through our water quality dashboard that we have, again, modeled after the estuary program to make it consistent, unified. And so when we proposed, you know, to add that area in is because it was, what we didn't want to do is say, this is a very small team and, you know, they're not getting more people. They're getting more work, and that's not fair. But how big is the lift? You know, so we wanted to come in and it's like, you know, there's already an established plan and data that in this area. So there's no starting from scratch. So it seemed like a good fit, you know, especially because it seems kind of weird that our boundaries literally, like, you're at one line, and if you're south of the line, you're in the estuary program, and if you're north of the line, you're in the Clearwater Harbor, St. Joseph Sound CCMP, and it's just kind of weird, but it is what it is. It's an arbitrary line. And so that's how it came up, at least that section of it. And there have been other areas where folks have talked about, you know, widening out the boundaries, but that's the western side of Pinellas County up to the Anclote, and that's the why of it is that it's, you know, we've already invested in creating a system that is as closely as we could modeled what's going on over here.
I mean, I would worry that it would take more resources away because Tampa Bay was doing amazing. And now we've had a slide. And do we have the resources to take away from here to get it back to where it was, to then take on broader, bigger? And so would we then water down our efforts and have less success by expanding? So I don't know.
Fair question. Yeah. Colleen, did you want to?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm always pushing to reach out and bring more people to the table. The Anclote River, for instance, is a real sore spot for me. I've watched it, and it's really hard to get Tarpon Springs to the table and to get Pasco to the table and to get all these other entities to the table. There's no mechanism.
Feel your pain.
To sit there and watch that painfully not make any progress at all. So anything that could be given or thought about to bring people together to improve that section is beneficial to the bay, any way you slice it. So I know we've always had that interest, and there just has never been a mechanism in place to help us work together and build a plan because Pasco can't do it alone. Tarpon Springs can't do it alone. That, you know, it's gotta be a team effort and your leadership is in an incredible position to be able to impact and make improvements, in my opinion. And I don't think you would jeopardize any other parts of your program. I think, you know, that there's an ability to start weaving things together and build that communication that's solely desperately needed.
So there's a request for a temperature check on this issue. Do people feel prepared, comfortable to do a temperature check, or where are you guys at?
I think there's a lot of questions to answer first. You know, do we have the resources? Would that take away resources that are needed somewhere else? I think until those questions are answered, then it's hard to. Just my thought.
Yeah, I know, had kind of updated the group on some positive developments in terms of short-term and maybe longer-term funding. We think we're gonna be okay in terms of what's coming from the federal government. But still some uncertainty there. Now is the time to be talking about expanding. So if you were going to consider that, I think you would need to take a really hard look at. I know we're saying it shouldn't impact resources. I would want to know that that's true before I could get behind the idea of piling more on the current staff.
Yeah, certainly.
Right.
Yeah, and hearing all this conversation, knowing the immediate outlook is okay.
Right.
The longer term, over the next 5 years, is very uncertain, as each one of the entities represented in this room probably is experiencing now. All that being said, part of this conversation that we're gonna start enter into is sort of what is the desire of the local funding commitment moving forward in the face of that uncertainty, especially for potentially federal resources that we've relied on in the past. The boards have previously discussed goals of creating more autonomy, of providing more local funding in case there was a dearth of federal funding coming into the program. And that was just to maintain core operations. If we're talking about an expansion into other areas and inclusion of different areas that we would have to manage as a staff of 9 currently, we kind of need to think about that and what the vision of the board is to sort of plan for that, and then interlocal agreement update. And if we have sort of a strong direction either way, then we could present those sort of options back to the board and provide sort of that guidance on decision-making moving forward. If that's the desire, we have traditionally, as shown on this graphic, relied a lot on resources outside of our core funding. Our core funding is basically represented by that yellow and red pie that in this pie chart. So it's a component of our sort of core operations, but everything else that we're implementing relies a lot on additional funding streams that we don't necessarily have control over. And that needs to sort of be taken into consideration as we move forward and think about a vision over the next 5 years, because there isn't certainty on that 70% of our funding stream right now. If some of those grant opportunities go away, we see an attrition in terms of donations or environmental funds that are also supporting some of our projects. So really, that's, this is the start of that candid conversation. In reading the room, we could bring back different options at the November board meeting based on sort of a menu. And from there, I think you all would have more of an informed sort of position to kind of base that decision on. And we're prepared to kind of give you that full menu. We just want to know what your primary appetizer and main dish are going to be. to dive in a little bit deeper to that question and in terms of expansion, prior boards had the desire to sort of build a non-federal reserve in our annual funding from primarily local sources to about the $800,000 level. To date, we're about halfway there. We recognize that was probably going to be taking at least like 10, 15 years to build up that reserve. We have about a little over 406,000 in non-federal reserves built up. So we're about halfway there to the previous board goal. If that is still a desire of this board moving forward, then there's ways we could think about structuring the interlocal agreement and the funding distribution amongst partners to accommodate that goal. And again, that's just getting us to sort of our current organizational structure. If we're talking about boundary expansion, then I think that also needs to kind of play into how we factor in our costs moving forward. That's sort of the first thing that I wanted to mention and bring that background to this discussion. The other thing that has been part of the interlocal agreement was the acknowledgement that inflation is happening. We have to pay our salaries and cost of living adjustments each year. So there is a 2.5% factor that's built into the local funding contributions on a 5-year basis in the current interlocal agreement. And if that's still a desire of the board, then we could present those options to the board as well at the November meeting. But again, this is trying to get you guys' feedback on what is board's preference. We want to deliver efficiently and effectively as a staff of 9. We want to understand sort of the core services that we're providing that you're not getting from other partners. And we want to add value to the region in terms of the delivery of those products and what we offer. So from that feedback, I could sort of scale and give you that menu of options on how to move forward over the next 5 years based on board's preference. But absent you guys having that conversation, I'm going to kind of throw stuff at the wall and present that to you guys in November. So this is the opportunity to kind of express your preference. So I could give you a very, very much more informed menu of options in November.
Say, I know my boss said at the meeting, the briefing we had, he's very interested and he'd be willing to give more if we were able to expound those boundaries, and we would automatically be in a position where we would have to donate more and give more to the estuary.
I think
If
a boundary expansion is the direction that the board offers, then I think to Vice Chair Peters's point, would necessitate an increasing of the size of the pie, right? So that dues would then be taking into account that additional population that's coming into the study area boundary. And you could probably riff the numbers faster, but it's all generally pretty small numbers in terms of what the increase population is.
Yeah, the numbers I've drafted is basically keeping our core operations as is and not thinking about additional staffing needs or funding for projects in those new areas. But it is relatively minor based on keeping sort of that status quo in terms of overall funding.
Could it be slow stepped? Could we slow step things? Like, do we have to go like all the way to the wall and have everything done instantly? Or if there is a boundary, what would that look like? How could we balance that?
And that's the key term, I think, is balance. And Kelly mentioned it. I would probably bring back something to the board that considers the new work that we're going to have to entertain with that boundary expansion and factor that into an interlocal agreement in a much more robust way than I have preliminarily. I think what I would love to hear from this board is there a specific funding goal that you want to achieve on the estuary program? Are we happy level funding the program at our fiscal year 2026 adopted rates, or are you wanting us to provide additional services in our existing geography and then think about how we could provide services beyond that and if the boundary was expanded? from there, that gives me more of an informed look at how to plan over the next 5 years in our operations, and the services that we can provide.
Randy.
So it would be good to maybe talk to some of the other estuary programs and expound their boundaries and see how that worked out for them, regarding the additional, maybe local contributions, because the EPA match is gonna stay the same no matter how big you are, right? If the EPA funding is the same to every estuary program, the small ones and the big ones, am I not correct?
Except for the two bad
Majority of your
And
funding
is the will of annual appropriations. of
Sure.
Congress.
So the local contribution, I doubt is ever gonna be enough to make up, because it's gonna be a small percentage. And Los Pasco really wants to go out there and contribute a lot of money there. I doubt that increase based on population is gonna offset things. Chinet, they expanded their boundary a few years ago, and the amount of local contribution, just the amount of additional watershed control of is way out of whack. So, the thing about it, you get wider, you tend to get shallower. That's always an issue. So is there, really need to look, is there some strategic reasons to expand? I hear like, hey, you guys do such a great job, we'd like you to kind of take over our area and help out, but that may not be a great reason, especially if funding is finite. So this discussion has come up several times over the years since I've been involved with the estuary program. So you gotta really think about whether the resources are gonna be there to be able to handle an expanded geography of issues.
Yeah, and the point, and Maya mentioned, it takes unanimity to actually expand. So I'm not hearing that from this conversation so far. But again, I think it's an option that we can develop and kind of have a discussion around.
So my thought is, we got Tampa Bay, you guys all did a great job and got Tampa Bay so healthy. And now we've taken a slide, right? I haven't been on the board too long, so I'm just going with a little bit I know. So we've taken a slide, and I guess when you say about funding, where do we want to be, or expansion? I think what we have to look at is what's the time frame to get Tampa Bay back to where it was? And would more funding expedite that quicker? Right? Is it possible to expedite it quicker, or is it something that's gonna take a decade or something? That I don't know, that you guys are the experts. So is there a way to put more resources in there to get it done quicker? And once we can get that stabilized, then it would make sense for expansion. But right now, that's not stabilized. And so, what would it take for that? And would our desire be to expedite that, to move it up quicker, bring in more money to move it up quicker if it's possible? It may not be possible. I think that's kind of, that's really right. What we've got is our priority, and we had it great, and it has taken a slide. So what's it going to take to get it back up to great again? And then, because I wouldn't even consider expansion until we have that. If we have that solid, sure, we've got it solid. We can maintain it. We can manage to maintain that. We can expand. There'd be resources to expand. So that's just kind of my thought. So it would be really the will, if it's possible to expedite it. Are we looking for more money to expedite it, or have we got a plan and it can't be expedited? That's the stuff I don't know.
I think while I'd love to take credit for everything that has been done, right, to get Tampa Bay to recovery, the reality is the service, the value, the unique proposition that the estuary program has to the region is we can take the information from the long-term monitoring programs that you have, all of that data, and help you understand your system and point you into a series of investments that we think are going to provide a return.
Right.
The reality is we don't need you to give us more money to do that, and don't get mad at me. What we need is when we give a recommendation, there's a troubling trend here, this requires investment, here's a series of options of things that you could do that could turn this around, then we need you in your respective budgets to allocate those funds to do those projects, because most of the things where we saw big success is in your wastewater treatment plants, your stormwater management stuff. We're not doing that for you. You're doing that for yourselves. We're just helping you sort of winnow down, right, the most bang for the buck kind of things that are gonna provide a return the ecosystem outputs that you're looking for. So I think like my thinking is like, we don't necessarily need you to pack more money into the estuary program. That's not what we're asking for. But we want to make sure that we're providing you information in a way where you can make impactful investments for the portions of the bay that are struggling. So is it going to take more money? Yeah. And frankly, it's probably going to be a not insignificant amount if you want to see the return relatively quickly, but it's not going to flow through the estuary program. I mean, you see our federal appropriation is $850,000. You know, I think we do a lot with a little bit of money. I am not delusional about like what it is. And I think I can express what our unique proposition is to you. And it's a supportive one. It's not out in front.
Right, okay, thank you.
When does the local agreement expire? 26.
Yeah, next year. So our plan, and I can talk about this in the next couple of slides, so is, again, this was the initial conversation, kind of open up on the long-term vision of this new board. Our next step is to come back in November with some options, both what Maya presented in terms of strategic plan updates, present the boards with some options there, but also some draft language to updates to the interlocal agreement. There's two I kind of heard potentially, including some of this language on board position continuity with management policy board, kind of inserting that language. And the second big thing is talking about funding distributions over the next 5 years. And everything I'm hearing so far is there was three main options that we were thinking about as staff. If nothing was done to the interlocal agreement, then basically our funding would remain static based on fiscal year 2026 levels. If there's a desire to think about growth within the region and redistribute the funding distributions, then we present to you basically a continuation of the existing interlocal agreement based on new population information. So you'd be presenting with the funding distribution from all the partners based on those new population estimates. If there's alternative funding goals in terms of creating more local funding autonomy over the next 5 years to support recovery, then that would be another option, but I'm not necessarily hearing that just yet. It's more of how do we deliver services that gets the bay back on track over the next 5 years. And I think I have a pretty good idea of how to present that information. If there's additional alternatives in terms of expansion of geography, I need to hear that now and be prepared to bring that to the board for discussion in November. But otherwise, it sounds like sort of the direction in absence of unanimity.
Sorry.
That, just thinking about how we could do better to restore the bay back to, that goal that we have in terms of 40,000 acres of seagrass over the next 5 to 10 years. It's probably going to take more than just to get there. Providing that level of service is sound like the desire, and we can provide that back to the board in November. And from there, sort of, we'll entertain a second round of discussion. And then my goal would be to actually finalize any updates by the February board meeting. So between November and February, we'd probably work with legal counsels of each of the organizations represented in our local agreement, make sure the language that we're proposing is up to snuff from each of the respective legal counsels, and hopefully pass a final version at the February board meeting. That would give enough time for each one of you as participating organization in their interlocal agreement to take those back to your individual boards and get that language approved at that point. And the ultimate deadline is to get all that filed in each of the 4 counties represented in the Tampa Bay watershed boundary by the clerk report by September 30th of 2026.
I have a question for the group. Given, I think like what Vice Chair Peters has talked about, like the importance of trying to turn the bay around. If you think about like the players that aren't at the table right now. One of the ones that comes to mind is we talk a lot about the Florida Department of of Transportation. I mean, and the bridges and causeways. Would it be of interest to this group right now, like they are operating, they're doing their core mission, they're doing their things? Would it be valuable to invite them to this body so that they are sort of in the fold and also considering some of the region's goals with respect to environmental quality and some of their projects? I don't know that they would say yes, but like a lot of times I've heard us sort of say like, we need them in order to be successful, but they're not at the table. What do you all think about that?
They should be at this table. I mean, that they impact so much on the Gulf side for Pasco County. US 19 is like a dam. And it just shuts right off right there. And that water, that lack of water flow that can't get across anymore is major problems for us, major problems. And having them at the table to support your programs and it only makes us stronger.
For those, I saw a couple thumbs up, some head nods. Anybody have some concerns about that? Or
I would agree that, it's very worthwhile to reach out to them. I think they do need to be,
the management board, maybe?
yes, I don't know how that would work,
Me neither.
policy board level, but.
It's a wild hair I got right live.
I think it's a good idea. You know this from like TAC and SU and management consortium meetings from my brain, but I was also, so not just FDOT and the bridges acting as a physical barrier to water quality improvements and seagrass growth and getting Tampa Bay kind of back again. But I was maybe gonna throw out to this group, if there is from, the estuary program kind of shining a light on a regional cooperative project or something that we cannot achieve at the individual entity levels, and more of a, hey, this is a call to action from our very large group. And maybe that kind of lights the fire, which is what Jan was saying with our policy folks, to kind of get everybody on board with not just the, 5-year plan, but a separate thing. That's all.
I don't want Tampa Bay to have to be on fire to be engaging to be.
No, that's, I understand, but I also, again, to Jan's kind of point of getting.
A challenge to overcome together.
Yes, correct, yes. And if the estuary program can, again, guide.
Any ideas what that might look like?
Well, I think it's, again, having FDOT at the table and talking about Gordon Campbell would not hurt. Am I? Soapbox, I'm off that.
Well, their offices are right here.
Yes.
I meet with them all the time, so I gotta say, they have me on speed dial, I mean.
What do you think, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, their district operations lead, their manager, I mean, he's right here. In Pinellas County, his office is on Alberton Road. And, Justin, still, he's a very new secretary, and but he's gonna be at our quarterly Public Works Directors meeting next Friday. And, so I've asked him to come and, kind of engage with us. If I can get Hillsborough and Pasco to show up. I send you guys invitations, but I don't always get you, but I'd love to have you. I think it's a good opportunity. We've been having a lot of conversations about different things that, honestly, my 5 years as a public works director it's just gotten more collaborative with DOT, not less. They're engaging on a lot of different issues, so I think it's a really good opportunity to invite them to the table.
Is it a different district in Pinellas?
Community that's in a different district. Community's district.
District 7?
It's far.
Yeah, good news is that we're planning to meet with Justin, the District 7 secretary, in early September. So we sort of broached this subject, possible joiner to the SJ Program Management Board. That's the desire of this board, and kind of see where they're at in terms of that.
From the local, local, you know, even just getting them engaged a little bit more on some of the projects that they're doing. And I think, you know, they've got a lot of projects. Like I said, they come to our quarterly meetings and give us update on all various projects they're working on and things. That's not necessarily on the board when you go to their website, you know, so you're missing, you know, that information if you're not engaging, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't,
My concern is like when we meet with them, like for like the things that are in the phase or something, they're meeting with usually like Ed and me, and if you're new and you don't know that like we're trying to carry the weight of like all of the commitments that you all have made versus like if you're in the room, you kind of understand like everybody's like wanting this kind of support in our transportation projects to be sort of amplifying our water quality as well.
well, like, just so you all are aware, they're having a kickoff meeting for the State Road 60 project.
We are aware.
Okay, Hillsborough to the Gulf of Mexico, so, great opportunity to attend and.
Or something that when they were doing the last time, we all asked them.
Doesn't mean we can't ask again, Maya. But, yeah, maybe it would be, you know, even, you know, I know it's a little lower down in the organization, but sometimes that's how you build it is, you know, maybe we invite, you know, the Michaels and the Julies, you know, that are here locally and just, you know, they know the local stuff as much as anybody is getting them engaged at the TAC and ask them to come and talk about the projects and specifically some of the, you know, the stormwater pieces of it, or, you know, some of the shoreline work that they've been doing, because I know they're looking at the Gandy right now. So
They have their preferred alternative for the Gandy out there. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, there's ripe opportunity, especially with the PD&E for Courtney Campbell State Road 60 right now. And I've heard them present at the Transportation Board, Hillsborough County, and with the desire of looking at water quality improvements like the bridge breach that they built over by Ben T. Davis Beach. So as long as we can continue to engage them on that front, I think that's a positive, but having them in the fold of our management conference just kind of elevates that work for them as well. And happy to kind of explore those conversations with Justin.
Well, you know, sometimes at least what we heard, you know, the last go around was like, well, it's gonna cost X amount of money to do that. And, you know, one of the things we are is, we're a big group, we're loud voices and, you know, I gotta say, I think our congressional delegation's been very responsive to our asks. We've asked for funding for a couple of our bridge projects and they've come through. Kathy Castor has come through with some funding for San Martin. And Representative Luna was able to get some funding for a different project, but she did put in for Beckett Bridge, which is up in Tarpon Springs, and it wasn't funded this time, but she said she's willing to try again. You know, so having, you know, when those conversations come up and it's, you know, well, our budget is X, and in order to get to where you guys want to be, we need X amount more. There maybe is the opportunity for us collectively to come together and talk with our delegation with support from DOT and try to move some of those initiatives. It's, you know, like the commissioner said, it's like, how long is it gonna take us to get there? What is it gonna take to get there? And some of this stuff is not stuff that we have the ability to do. I mean, we can't modify causeways.
And we could ask each delegation, right, to pressure the FDOT to make water quality a high priority within every one of their plans. And because we're an estuary, that could be, you know, if the Manatee, the Hillsborough, the Pinellas, the Pasco delegation all agree that they would, you know, determine that in estuary communities, FDOT has to make a priority on water quality. And, you know, that way it kind of, they get the pressure from above when we can be asking for them at the same time.
And I think part of the, is just as a new secretary is educating him probably on some sort of our past efforts, what was referenced before in terms of the Howard Franklin Bridge construction. You know, we engage with them, both Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, EPC, all provided Nitrogen Management Consortium, all provided letters of support on looking at alternatives for that causeway under the bridge construction. That was roughly about $1 billion, and we were probably asking for $50 to $100 million consideration for an enhancement to the causeway at that time. We didn't make much progress there, but there's this opportunity now with the new Secretary Courtney Campbell Causeway to kind of re-engage them and hopefully some louder voices this go around will prove to be more successful.
It could be worth you going to delegation meetings and talking about what you're thinking about. And I know our delegation meeting is September, I think, because committee week start in October, so everybody's having their delegation meetings between now and October. So you can just go present at delegation meetings and, you know, tell them the big broad what you're thinking. And you may end up with a legislator that's going to say, I really like this, I want to help you. Just a thought.
I guess the question for you guys, how do you invite them? Is there a process? I don't know that, have we ever invited a new member? This is kind of like a novel thing.
Yeah, as Maya alluded to, I mean, Pasco County was added to the interlocal agreement through a joinder after the 2015 update. And then Port Manatee was also added at that time. So there's this allowance through a joinder agreement for additional parties. And again, it requires everyone to agree that 100% that they want this new entity to enter into the agreement. I think it becomes a point of conversation with them in terms of whether they join as a management board member, which doesn't necessitate sort of funding contributions towards the program, or as a policy board member at that point. Sure, their preference is going to be to enter as a management board member.
To be true, for a long time, you know, they overfunded the their share of the nitrogen management consortium. They do have like routine funding for some of these things, so you might find that they bite. So I would put the ask out there.
I think it's worth it. I mean, they fund us on, you know, various things. I mean, we do their environmental enforcement for them. We do their water quality monitoring for them, some of their other reporting for them for MPDS. I mean, they do have, you know, funding for, you know, different aspects. I mean, I know it's really part of their permit, but you know, it works better for them to partner.
Sure.
And I should have said that there is a model. Tampa Bay Water is part of our management board and contributes a certain amount over the life of the interlocal agreement as well. So they could entertain that as well as a management board.
I mean, what's the harm? The worst thing that can happen is you get no. Right?
Yeah.
To me, I'm thinking about like some of these big picture things of what I've heard from the partners over the years. It's like that we have this thing that we want to happen, but if they're not at the table, it's not something we control. Like, to me, that's a thing we can address. It's also like the other observation that I've sort of had, having worked in this region 20 years now, is like who participates has changed over time. So like you were talking about maybe like engage a person at the staff level and start there. We have certainly seen like when a lot of the program started, administrator level positions be the ones that are involved in the program. And now I think that would be the exception, not the norm. It's like the authority has been delegated down, right? And that's, I think, great and fine most, like probably 90% of the time. But when we do get to decision points, we've heard from partners that said, I don't feel comfortable making this decision. That is above, my pay grade. And that's something to think about too, is whether or not we have the right mix of folks represented on the boards or the committees.
Do have about 5 minutes left, so I do want to get some sort of direction from y'all from two options. Basically, given the uncertainties, is there a desire to level fund the program at fiscal year 2026 levels over the next 5 years? Or is there still the preference for the board to factor in the 2.5% growth to accommodate for inflation and other operational cost increases that we anticipate over the next 5 years as per the current interlocal agreement, and just redistribute that according to new population estimates? If you give me that sort of idea of what the board is thinking in terms of preference, that
Is that a motion?
it does, no, it's a workshop. So I
think that's a good idea. I'd like to present back to our mayor and budget folks to look at both and see where we're at in the city. In my opinion, I'd like to go forward with the 2.5 like we did before. Just keep that percentage moving forward. And depending on the population growth, I'm sure county is much larger than city now, so they'll probably be paying more, and Pasco to have more people in city staff, so they'll be. But I don't know. I mean, that's a good idea, I think.
I would agree. You need to have that inflationary percentage built in there to cover increasing costs. And relooking the population, I know that's gonna bite us, but.
Yes, indeed.
But some input from the water district, what our funding level.
I would say Pinellas County is going much more conservative. But we do write in for all our staffs to get, whatever the percentage is. If I were to take that to my board and ask them, my intuition tells me they're gonna want it to stay flat. So if you want us to take it to our boards, we can take it to our boards and come back with you if you want an answer now. If what you have been doing is at 2%, then I would say continue to go with that 2%. And my board may say, we don't like that. But, because our board is very different than it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, so. But I would go ahead, if you've got the majority that says that 2%, I would go.
Yeah, my plan is to present at least those two options. I just want to make sure that I'm not overwhelming you with a bunch of different options that are probably going to be out of the realm of possibility for your boards to think about.
Is there a ramification for one versus the other? Let's say you kept it flat. I mean, in the end, if like she's saying, the board is going to say you kept it flat and you're fine, then why increase? So be careful what you wish for, because if you say that I'd like to keep it flat and everything's going to be fine here, then everybody's going to say, well, yep, that's fine with us too.
I think that the first step would be for the management policy board to consider it. And then the decision of the management policy board would effectuate any changes to the interlocal agreement that would be brought to the individual articles.
I will agree with the increase.
So my plan is to bring at least those two options, level funding and then add.
Ramifications for those, for the two. What happens if we stay level? And
Yeah, I mean, the level funding would be basically be what we've described in fiscal year 2027, our 2026 budget, carry that forward through 2031. So there'd be no change, it'd be the level. The alternative would consider how the interlocal agreement is structured now, just continue that through 2031 with the 2.5% increase based on the population estimates.
And I think what we've shown back to you all is that what we've tried to do is load our budget towards projects back out in the community. And so if we stay in a position where we're level funding at 2026 levels, you know, what we have to do then is look at that mix and will we be able to allocate the same proportion of our funds to projects back in the community? There's a question, that's direction, that's something that we might need to sort of talk about moving forward. But if you might be the consequences, which I think is what Alex is asking. Yeah, that's it. Right now, we're trying to act on this ethic of turning the money back into the community. So this might affect our ability to do that at the same level.
Yeah, and it gets to Mr. Peters' point, you know, if that's the case, we're level funded, that's probably just gonna prolong us restoring back to a certain condition because there'll be less and less funding going towards projects through time.
Anything else folks need to get off their chest, want us to consider for the next 5 years? In the key action follow-up email that I send out, we will, yes. You know, go.
I just wanted to make one last comment. I heard, you know, I'm hearing what people are saying about, you know, budget pressure. I think everybody, whether you're public or private, is feeling that, and inflation certainly is a huge thing. I think one of the things, if I was going back and talking to other elected officials, just to remind everybody, the dollars that we ask for as an estuary program and the science that your team is generating. When we were having to make really tough decisions on how to spend money, it really, really increases the importance of that science. And a lot of times it's just as much about knowing what to not spend money on, right? So we can't make those tough decisions on how to spend the public's money if we don't have the science behind it. So I think having those discussions about austerity and budget reductions, that's all legitimate. Making sure we spend the dollars right. But I think if I was talking to my county commissioners and kind of, you know, walking the halls, that's kind of how I would frame it. Is that, you know, we don't want to go backwards, and the science that this group generates on behalf of the region is going to allow you to make good decisions.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So we do have a survey for y'all. It'll be linked in the key action memo, just to sort of get your pulse on what products or services we're providing that you value. You can grab the thing now or it'll be linked in your email. So up to you. Should be quick, definitely less than 10 minutes. Hopefully you're able to fill that out, sort of let us know. We do a lot with a small staff. We're not committed to doing all of these things if they're not helpful to you. So please feel comfortable telling us the things that we're producing right now. If they're not providing value, we're happy to either make them better or to stop doing them so that we can focus our attention on the things that are returning value. So please be candid in your feedback there. Like I said, it should be pretty quick and dirty, hopefully real easy. Appreciate y'all thinking through these things and offering any direction that you can during this session. No.
It's the most important.
I don't know if I was gonna say.
Maybe Julie should explain.
She